Okay, so I wanted to talk about violence in video games because I've got two pro gamers with me. I've confirmed that independently. These are big video game people. You guys may remember that I was assistant manager at Electronics Boutique in Hicksville, Long Island in the late 90s. So I know a little bit about the topic myself. Moved more Pokemon than anyone. That's what I tell people. The American Psychological Association on their website lists some myths versus facts about video game violence, and I'm not quite sure I agree with them. Myth number one, violent video game research has yielded very mixed results. Facts, this is according to them. Some studies have yielded non-significant video game effects, just as some smoking studies failed to find a significant link to lung cancer. Violent video games are significantly associated with increased aggressive behavior, thoughts and affect, increased physiological arousal, and decreased pro-social helping behavior. Okay, I got some problems with that, but let's get through all of them. Myth number two, there are no studies linking violent video game play to serious aggression. Fact, high levels of violent video game exposure have been linked to delinquency, fighting at school, and during free play periods, and violent criminal behavior. I mean, what else are you going to do during free play periods? And number three, unrealistic video game violence is completely safe for adolescents and older youths. Facts, cartoonish and fantasy violence is often perceived incorrectly by parents and public policymakers as safe. However, experimental studies with college students have consistently found increased aggression after exposure to clearly unrealistic and fantasy violent video games. Okay, so they're giving us a lot to work with there. So you know what? I'm just going to let you talk before I ask a question.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, I've covered this a lot on my channel,
Yeah.
Nerd Alert. It's one of my most, I don't want to say pet because I hate it,
It's
but
beyond
I say it a
pet
lot.
peeve, yeah.
There were a few problems I had in those myths versus facts. First of all, it says aggressive behavior. Aggressive isn't necessarily violent, like kill you with a gun,
Yeah.
first of all. Another one was there was a link to delinquency, a link to this kind of person, but that doesn't really, correlation is not a causation. So that it could be that kind of person is already drawn to video games. And another thing, ooh, I'm getting mad.
Bring it. You want to break something?
Well, it's
that would actually only prove their point. Yeah.
No. So video games are brought up often as something like, and when there's a shooting, oh, he played Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
It caused this. That's not really a fair thing to say. It's a popular scapegoat. Even our friend Dianne Feinstein kind of flipped on that. Mm-hmm. After, I believe, Sandy Hook, she attempted to get gun legislation in, and it did not work for various reasons.
That's a whole other story.
It's a whole other story,
Yeah.
but we're going to stay on topic. She kind of changed ponies and then at one point said, oh, well, we have to be aware of these violent video games that are causing kids to do this. She changed ponies because she wanted her name on the legislation against something with Sandy Hook. She was using it, as politicians so often do, as a scapegoat, a crutch. And it's, frankly, the facts don't support this.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get into some of the specifics that Kim mentioned, but let's go to the scapegoat thing first. Mm-hmm. Because to me, it just seems like a giant scapegoat. This is just idiotic because I grew up playing video games. Even Grand Theft Auto, I never even played the game to accomplish anything. All I would do would be punch people and throw people out of a car and drive over people. Yeah. And you get that aggression out. And I never felt violent after playing it. I maybe ate mushrooms because Mario did, but that's a whole other thing. But really, I mean, what do you think? The good mushroom. Portobello mushrooms, Ma. Okay. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it totally, causation is not necessarily correlation. What did you say? It was statistics. It was very good.
What was your phrase?
Kind of math.
Causation.
Causation and correlation aren't
not the same thing. Yes,
a link
right.
is not something that caused something else.
Right.
It's just a fact that's there that also has another fact beside it.
Right.
We're noting that it's there. We're not noting that one begot the other.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if you're predisposed to aggressive behavior, you're interested in, theoretically, in violent video games because it speaks to your aggressiveness.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. For work, we do a lot of video game reviews. We do a lot of playthroughs. There were two games that I kind of mainlined last year. Mm-hmm. That was BioShock Infinite and also Grand Theft Auto 5. And it was like 15-hour play days of just nonstop. And anytime you do anything for that amount of time, I mean, it kind of screws up with your brain. Like your body gets used to like thinking in this pattern, and you know go outside in La Cienega and think about how can I steal that car and drive it into the Beverly Center and blow it up. You know what I mean? And you never really do it.
Right.
But it's like
that thought actually did pop in your head. In a
maybe, but that's really more of a my problem kind of thing,
Okay.
you know, and that's really more about me as a person. But I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to Grand Theft Auto. But if you do anything, I mean, God, if you watched House of Cards and you mainline that like so many people did, I was manipulating everybody, you know, like well now they know.
Yeah.
Sorry, but yeah, I was just like, you know, I was like I'm actually going to be the president pretty soon. Spoiler alert, sorry.
Well, you know, interestingly, in House of Cards, they did it more in season 1 that he was playing video games to get out his aggression. And then in season 2, he got it out in other ways, I suppose, especially in the first episode. But yeah, so this is just purely scapegoat stuff. I mean, why don't people ever talk about the good parts of video games, the eye-hand coordination, and the fact that you might be exercising some other aggressions and getting them out normally?
Oh,
and that
sure.
kind of stuff.
There's things such as the concept of flow, which is a psychological concept I've talked about before. It's something where your mind gets you're doing something that's very challenging, but also very rewarding to you. And it's this great reliever in your psychological state. You can get this from playing Tetris. But one thing I wanted to talk about on the term, back to scapegoating, this is not the first time this has ever happened. Of course, you can call back to the Comic Code Authority of the 1950s. And it was this government group censoring comics, and comics could only be approved by them, saying like, oh, they're hurting our children, they're making them violent and delinquent with that rock and roll and those blue jeans. And
right, so it's just the next extension
of all. It's just a silly extension. It just keeps, this will happen again with whatever is after video games or the next version of video games.
Yeah, so I'm curious, you guys that are in the gamer community, what happens every time there's a shooting and then some idiot gets on TV and blames video games without knowing anything? What goes on in the gamer community, actually, like on the message boards and on Xbox Live and all that? Like, are people talking about it? Do they just ignore it? Do they feel like they're being attacked?
No, I think unless you want to be self-righteous about it and you want to put it up for people to, freak out about, that for the most part it's ignored, because I don't think it's really taken very seriously. I mean, video gamers really are more interested in, that was kind of cool.
That's violence again.
Video gamers are more interested in, the imagination of a video game, of the world building, of the kind of alternate reality experience that you get from doing something that's an active intellectual experience a lot of times. A lot of these games are super story heavy. A lot of them are really difficult from a coordination standpoint. And I think when you really are a true gamer, you get that it's not about that. But so far, it looks like to a lot of us, I think, Washington just being upset.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree. I don't think it's self-righteous to stand up for yourself and say that this is not what causes me to feel this way. And I think that's a problem, actually, that gamers kind of keep to themselves and don't stand up more for themselves and let these figures bear down on them and blame them for things.
Sure, and I'll restate. I mean, it's self-righteous if you're going to be somebody who's posting this story, defending it, saying like, you guys are the reason that all these shootings are happening. I mean, there's I don't think that it's an active conversation that's being really had. And if you are going to bring that up, it's like you're probably just trolling because you're looking for somebody to, something to fight about.
And you know what? Gamers don't have to agree on everything.
Right.
So I think that is actually okay. And I would be remiss if we did something on video game violence and school shootings and all that, and we didn't talk about the prescription drug angle, because that seems like a far bigger problem than the video games to me. Does that just seem pretty obvious to you guys?
Well,
because that's what we always find out too. They don't always play video games, but 90% of the time I'm willing to say they're on some sort of prescription drug.
There's not always stellar parenting at play as
well.
Because sometimes these games are rated mature, and they're rated mature for a reason. I'm not saying that causes anything. I am saying maybe you should be aware of what your child is playing and doing and watching.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously mental illness is a really big issue. We see it everywhere, especially in Los Angeles, unfortunately. Until we sort of address that as the cause of the problem, the issue's up here, right? The issue is from within, and it's not necessarily the external's fault. I think that maybe there's triggers, there's things that make people go crazy and go off the deep end, so to speak. But it's until we turn the conversation, I feel like I'm on Hannity, but until we turn the conversation to sort of more about, just like what's going on from a mental standpoint, then I think that you can blame anything, and you'll have just exhaustive list of things to talk about.
And for the record, people, Hannity causes shootings, not video games.